Morning, ladies. This video we're going to go through significant figures. So it's extremely important that you know how to round using significant figures. It's different to rounding to decimal places, and you always will see it when you do least squares regression lines. So you need to be able to round to significant figures, whether it's 3 or 4. I've just put those two as an example because I think if you can do 3 or 4, you can probably do anything. Just so you know the reason why we do it, let's say if we had a number like D and it said 3 decimal places, you're going to have then 0.000, and that kind of tells us that the number doesn't exist, or it doesn't exist. So let's say we were measuring something and you were told to round it to 3 decimal places, that would be 0.000, which is effectively 0. And you're saying, well, that means it's not there, but it is in fact there. So the reason why it's kind of referred to in science a lot, because in science we're often dealing with very, very, very small numbers, okay, very small numbers. So you need to use scientific notation or significant figures to actually say, well, it does exist, it's just a very small number. Now, in general maths and further maths, we don't really use exponentials, so times 10 to the power of something, which you may have seen before. We just need to do significant figures. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do rounding to significant figures. Okay, so question 1. We always look for I'm just going to get my pen ready. Stuck on green. Not that I've got anything against green, but I like pink. Okay, so we always start with the first non-zero number, and we count there. So you can see I've got 0, so I'm not going to count that as a significant figure. I count any non-zero numbers after that. So I've got 2, 3, 4, and then do your cutoff. Okay, and then look at whether you need to round. So after you've done the cut, this number here, the 2, will tell us whether we need to round the number on the other side. And we don't, because it's less than 5. So rounding this to 3 significant figures is just 0.234. And you're probably thinking, well, that's the same as rounding it to 3 decimal places. It is sometimes, but it's not always the case. And I'll show you with the next one. So question B, we've got 1.402. Now, it's already rounded to 3 decimal places, but we're doing 3 significant figures. And remember, we always include the first non-zero number. So in this case, we've got 1. So we'll count 1, 2, 3, and do our cut here. Okay, look and see if you need to do rounding. So again, we've got the number 2. And so we don't need to round. So we include all 3 numbers, including that 0. So when you're doing 3 significant figures, you should always have 3 numbers unless your leading number is a 0. Okay, so leading zeros don't count. So your zeros at the start don't count, but the zeros at the end do. So this 0 kind of tells us you're closer, I guess, to 0.40 than you are to 0.44 or anything like that. Okay, so the 0 there is important. You need to include that. So 1.403 significant figures. Okay, let's have a look at C. So this time we've got 56, a 2-digit number, 0.023. So count 1, 2, 3. 2 again. It's just coincidental, me typing on the computer. So this time we write 56 point. Just check if there's any rounding needed. No, there's not. So it's 56.0. Okay, again, putting that 0 in. We're rounding to 3 significant figures, therefore we need 3 numbers. All right, let's have a look at D. So at D, we've got 0.000, I think I included them all, 43215. You ignore all those leading zeros until we get to the first non-zero number, which is 4. So 432. Do your cut. check if there's any rounding. So the 1 means we don't round. We don't worry about any other digit except for the one that follows that cut. Okay, so don't worry about the 5. We don't need to round anything because of that 5. We're just looking at the number after the cut. Okay, so we include all those zeros. 1, 2, 3, just make sure I've got them all, and then 4, 3, 2. So you can clearly see here, not to 3 decimal places, but 3 significant figures. So we need to include all those zeros and then 4, 3, 2. Okay, and it's very rare in general maths and further maths that you will see a number like this, but it's good that you know how to apply it to any number. All right, let's look at E. So again, counting 1, 2, 3, do your cut. Check if there's any rounding needed. No, because the number is 1. So we've got 12.9. Let me just scroll on down to do F. All right, this one here. Remember, we don't count the first 0. So we've got 1, 2, 3. Do your cut. So we've got 0.102. Okay, so 3 significant figures, not including the first 0. Any zeros that are in between definitely count, and any zeros at the end you count as well. All right, so maybe have a go at doing question 2 on your own. You can pause now and have a go, but I'm going to do them as well. Hopefully we've got some that we actually need to do some rounding up, because all those other ones, there was no rounding up required. All right, so let's go through the answers for question 2. I'm going to do it a little bit quicker. So 200, do your cut. Okay, so we've got 20 and then this number after your cut, because it's 5 or more, we actually have to round up. So it's going to be 20.1. All right, let's look at B. Remember, we don't count the first 0. So 1, 2, 3, do your cut. So 0.900. C, 1, 2, 3, do your cut. Oops, looks like I've crossed out the number 9. It was meant to be in between the 8 and the 9. So we've got 6, 7. Now looking at that 9, because it's on the, it's where we did our cut. Because it's greater than 5, we need to round that 8 to 9, because that number there is closer to 67,900 than it is to 60,800. Okay, and then we just, oops, yeah, sorry. And then we add the zeros on the end. Just thinking, what did I do wrong? Okay, so you need to add the zeros on the end. So the 9, we're kind of rounding it here to the nearest hundreds. So 67,900, and you need to include those 2 zeros, but we don't write the 9 and the 0. Okay, this one's a little bit harder. I kind of feel like in question 1 I did easy ones, and this one I did harder ones. All right, let's do our cut here. They all need rounding. Maybe I did that on purpose when I was doing the questions. All right, so we've got 122.9. So that 9 here, so we don't worry about any other number, just the 9 on the right side of the cut means that we round that to 3. So it's 123. Here we've got quite a big number. So E, we're doing a cut here. So we've got 1, 0, no rounding required. So we'll do a 0 again. And we do have to account for the hundreds, tens, and ones places, but we just put zeros there. So 0, 0, 0. Sometimes you will see different notations. So times 10 to the power of something. Okay, but you don't need to do that in further maths. So I'm just going to show you what you need to do for general maths and further maths. All right, so F, again, we don't worry about the zeros leading up, leading zeros. So we just look at the first non-zero. So go 1, 2, 3, do your cut. So we're going to have 0.0200. Okay, so don't leave it at 2, because that would just be 1 significant place. Okay, so 3 significant places mean you actually have to include those zeros. Sometimes a little bit confusing, but it's just how it's done, girls. Okay. All right, question 3. This time we're doing it to 4 significant figures. Not much different to before, but we just do it to 4, count 4 numbers instead of 3. So question A, 1, 2, 3, 4, do your cut. So we've got now 4, 8, 9. Now the number here is 0, so there's no rounding required, so we write that 0, and then we've got 2 more digits, so we're at 0, 0. So 489,000. Question B, count 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, so I'm going to cut here. Now this one here is a little bit tricky because we're going to have to round this 9 up. So we basically have to then write 1, 0, because this 8 means that we're rounding this figure on the other side of our cut, the 9, and that rounds up to, I guess you can write it as a 10, but we're doing 4 significant places, or figures, sorry. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, C. Count again, 1, 2, 3, 4, do your cut. So we've got 209.1. Okay, so we don't round, that 0 doesn't mean that we round the 1. Ignore the 9, it's not important. It's only the 2 numbers either side of the cut that we need to consider. All right, question D, 1, 2, 3, 4, do your cut. So it's already 4 numbers, but this 9 here means that we need to round this 6 up to 7. So we're going to have 3, 4, 5, 7. All right, question E, you don't count all your zeros. So let's start at 6, count 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, do your cut. When we're writing to significant figures, though, we do need to include all those zeros. How many is there? 3, 6, 7, 8, 1. All right, and then lastly, F, 1, 2, 3, 4, do your cut. Now, you can see this 5 means that this 0 on the right-hand side is going to round up. So we're going to have 0.001. All right, girls, so a little can be quite tricky, but you're always going to be tested on it. So you need to make sure you know how to do it. All right, well done.